fun programs are coming. So I'm gonna be here after the program. If you would like to know more, you can find me over there. I have the flyers. So another thing we have, I just wanted to take a moment to take advantage and say we have teen lunch at the library just for you teens. It's happening Wednesdays and Thursdays, 2 to 4. Come and visit over there. We have free snacks, we have different activities, video games, and it's a fun one. So let's go back to our event. I'm so happy to meet our authors today, and you all, you may already know Carolina, right? So from her first book, does anyone remember the title of first book? What's that? That's right, shut up, this is serious, I know, which was a great and is a great book. I really like it because it's about hope and love. So if I don't want to spoil it, so you can read the book if you already haven't, but it was a great book, so popular. So I just would like to mention some of the awards. The novel was 2025 Prowell Prey Award winner, a Maurice Award finalist, and LA Times Book Prize finalist. So proud of you, which is great, right? Say hooray! Right. And awesome. And this new book, we are here for her second novel today, Few Blue Skies. I like it too because it's about love, but meanwhile it's about fighting for a better life, fighting for a better place to live, fighting for a better community and space healthier, right? Yeah, that's an awesome one. So I hope you all get a chance to read this book. If you have already not, we have the book at the library. I just ordered and added to the collection too. And hopefully you get some of the free copies here and you will enjoy that. So hope you enjoyed this event too. And so proud of you and happy to be here with you all. Thank you. I'm passing to Fatima. She's going to introduce more. She's one of the former students, right? Yes? Okay. Good job. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Fatima, and I'm honored to be able to introduce my former teacher, Carolina Ixta. She was my teacher in 5th grade, and over the years, we've created a bond that led her to becoming a woman figure in my life, an inspiration for my younger sister and I. Since she became my teacher around 2019 to 2020, I've noticed that ever since I met her, she's extremely intelligent and has a passion for writing. I still remember one time I was in her class and she mentioned something about writing a book before Shut Up, This Is Serious, and my class got so hyped and wanted to read it, but we didn't because we were so young. I was also in the class while she was writing Shut Up, This Is Serious, and I'm so proud of her accomplishments. Her voice is important to young people like us because I feel like I learned a lot from her. For example, we learned about Heroes of the Week in 5th grade and acknowledged people of color. She has written edifying books that could be inspiring to her readers. Please help me welcome my former teacher, SLHS graduate, class of 2014, author, UC Berkeley alumni, Carolina Ixta.
Well, hi. Thank you, everyone, for coming. All the teachers who brought, I'm going to take this out, who brought their classes, spending the morning talking about books. At my school, I teach at Jefferson Elementary School. It's Read Across America Week, so I think this is a really beautiful way to celebrate literacy and books. I'll introduce myself. My name is Carolina Ixta. I went to this high school. I graduated 2014. I'm now an author, a bilingual educator down the street at Jefferson Elementary School. My first book came out in 2024, and this is my second book that came out like a couple of weeks ago. This book centers on environmental injustice. It's set in a fictionalized version of the Inland Empire. Anyone know where the Inland Empire is? You can raise a hand. It's okay if you don't. It's about 40 miles east of LA. My godmother lived there, like Riverside, Fontana, Ontario area. And they're experiencing like a massive issue with air pollution and air quality there by way of a bunch of warehouses, which are like factories that are set in places where mainly Latino and Black people live. So they're forced to breathe in these really, really terrible fumes from these diesel trucks that are passing by. They're more prone to asthma and lung cancer. So this book tells the story of two young people who are trying to fight against pollution and environmental racism and injustice. We're short on time, so I'm not going to read a section, but it's available at the library, it's available at a bookstore. I will say, though, that I think supporting your library is super, super, super important. I don't think I can emphasize it enough. There's this like national push against libraries with our current terrible political administration. So the fact that we have access to such a robust library here, obviously the San Leandro Public Library, Oakland Public Library, all libraries, I think they're the most generous places in the world. I'd also like to introduce our moderators. Can we give them a round of applause? It takes a lot of courage to be up here, so I'll have them take it away.
Hi, my name is Precious. I'm a senior here at San Leandro High, and I'm also president of the Project Lick Book Club.
Hi, my name is Angel. I'm a 10th grader, and I'm the treasurer of the Library Advisory Board.
Period.
Okay, Miss Carolina, it is an honor to have you here and to have
you.
you talk about your book. So we're going to start with some questions about your book. First questions I have for you is, what advice can you give to young writers and young people in general as someone who is a writer and has gone through like experiences to make your book a possibility?
Well, does anyone here want to be a writer or is interested in writing or bookmaking or publishing? You can raise a hand. Writing, I mean, I think there's a difference between writing and publishing, right? So if you want to be a writer, literally all you have to do is write. You can literally write anything. It sounds so silly, but I think the biggest obstacle that people confront when they're trying to write fiction specifically is coming up with a character and a setting. There's a lot of kids who start writing via fan fiction, and in like the lit space, there's like this big, like, oh my God, I would never. But it's a really easy way to get engrossed into someone else's story, right? Before you're able to form your own. It's like trying on clothes and figuring out what works. Now, if you want to get into publishing, that is a really, really, really different process. I think the biggest advice I'd give to anyone who wants to publish a book is to read a lot. I think, I read a lot, and I'm currently reading a book that's written by a celebrity. I won't name names, but it's so bad, you know? And I read it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. And I talk about it with my friends, and I'm like, it's really clear that this person doesn't read. The story has been told before, the plot beats are pretty flat, and the writing is just not very good. And I think to be a writer, you have to read, you have to study what it is that you're trying to produce. It's like being a musician and never listening to other people's music. It's like, this is the cheat code to understanding the taste that you want to develop, the voice that you want to create, the characters that you want to make. So you have to read a lot, but I think writers in the publishing industry, you have to build like really, really, really thick skin. Like, criticisms of my work are available publicly. Like, they're printed in magazines that are distributed nationally. They're available digitally. Like, hundreds of thousands of people can read my book and say it's the worst book that's ever written. Do I think that? No. Do a bunch of other people think that? Likely not. But I have to read reviews from critics, reviews from people who are reading my book, and let it kind of roll off my back and keep pushing forward. That can be really, really hard for a lot of people. So it's definitely building the thick skin, not only for the reception of critics and other readers, but because when you want to publish a book, you're going to hear no more than you're going to hear yes, including as someone who's already kind of broken into the industry. Even actively, I hear no from my editor, I hear no from my publisher, from my publicist, whoever's on the team, and I have to be okay with that and to go, okay, it's no to this one, but maybe we'll try this. Publishing a book, like the statistics of publishing a book are really, really, really slim. And I think people need to understand that. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? Like, getting into university is also really hard, but people do it all the time. But I always say that publishing is like knocking on a bunch of doors, and seeing who opens the door. And sometimes some people peek open and then close it. Sometimes people won't open. Sometimes people like slam the door in your face. But the best feeling in publishing is when someone opens the door and they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here," right? Like I've been waiting for you to come around. So I feel really grateful that I have the team that I have. But I think if you want to be a writer, that's like the most freeing experience. You just write. You can write in your journal. You can write different stories. You can write fan fiction. It doesn't matter. If you want to publish a book, I think you have to read very voraciously across different genres, and you have to build quite a lot of confidence to be able to hear no and go, this really important person in New York City just told me no, but I really believe in my work, so I'm going to keep going. That would be my 2 pieces of advice.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, how did your experience here as a student at San Leandro influence you becoming a writer?
I think the first person who told me I was a good writer was my 3rd grade teacher. I was 8, and I went to Washington Elementary School. Woo! And I had a teacher, her name was Miss Katz, and she used to assign us these like pictures of really absurd things. Like I remember one, it was like a cow swimming in an ocean, and she was like, write a paragraph about how this came to be. And both of my parents worked, so my grandfather would pick me up, and I'd go to my grandparents' house. And if you grew up in like a Mexican house, it was like very much that. It was like my grandmother who would like sew while watching Caso Cerrado, Cristina, 12 Corazones, or like whatever novela was on. So the TV would be so loud, and my grandfather was like out in the yard doing whatever, and my cousins were playing, and me and my sister would be doing our homework at the table, and I would be stressed. I would be like, oh my God, like I have to make this the best story I've ever written in my life. And she would put these lines for the paragraph, and I would like rip pages out of my notebook and write like 10 pages and staple them and turn them in. And she would be like, oh, okay, like I guess this is what she's doing. And out of nowhere one day she gave me a piece of paper and was like, okay, it's really clear to me that this is what you like to, it wasn't even clear to me, right? I just thought this was what I had to do, but she was like, it's really clear to me that you really like writing stories. Why don't you submit your work to this contest with Reading Rainbow? Reading Rainbow at the time, because I'm like dating myself, was a PBS show that ran, and LeVar Burton was the host, and I would watch it. It was like, I think PBS was for people who didn't have cable, so my sister and I would watch it. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. We would watch it on the weekends, and it was like that, and there was like a bunch of TV at the time that was meant to promote literacy, which I really, really, really wish would come back. But we would watch that, and so I wrote this story about a girl who immigrated from Mexico to the Bay Area. And every single day, I would obsessively check the mail to be like, what did they say, you know? And at the time, I was so hungry to write that I was like, they could tell me no, but at least they told me something, you know? So I remember winning an award for that book, and I went to this like hotel ballroom in San Francisco with my family, and I just was like, I was literally 8 with my whole family there, and I was like, I have to figure out a way to make this like the rest of my life, right? So I mean, it took me about 20 years to publish my first book from that moment, but through that process, like it took a teacher to tell me, I think you're really good at this. I had no idea, right? I just thought that is what I had to do. I wrote competitively in elementary school as well. I continued, like I remember writing an essay for the Golden State Warriors. It was like in the massive We Believe era. My 5th grade teacher was like, I think you would be really good at this. And then in middle school, I wrote my first book. I was like, I'm gonna write a novel. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just was like, okay, I'm gonna like dilly-dally around. And in high school, I wrote for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. And Mr. Doan, who we were talking about earlier, you can ask him, he'll remember. I needed a teacher to sign my permission slip. My mom was like, it's free, here you go, like whatever. But I needed a teacher, and I didn't have a teacher in the English department who would sign my permission slip. So I went to Mr. Doan, and I was like, hi, like I know you're my biology teacher, but I want to submit to this writing contest. Can you please sign this paper? And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, just please, like I'm gonna figure it out. So he signed it off and didn't think anything of it. And And then I found out, like, I submitted to this contest because it was free, and it was the one thing that came up on Google that didn't seem like it was a scam. I was like, okay, you're gonna read my work. There's not like a bunch of weird pop-up ads that are coming up. This seems legitimate. I have my teacher, he's gonna sign the paper, and I sent it off to New York. And that was like in fall, and I waited till like April to hear back from them. And in those months, I was in such a hurry to submit it that I did not know what I was doing. I started researching the award, and I found out that it was like the most prestigious art system that was like ever created in the history of teen writing. And like Langston Hughes had won the award, and Andy Warhol had won the award, and Sylvia Plath had won the award. And I just was like, man, this is gonna be so crazy when they tell me no, like, cause I have no idea what I'm doing. And I panicked for months. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get rejected, and it's gonna hurt, and whatever, right? And again, I would obsessively check my email, and then eventually they got back to me, and I had won a gold medal. And I told Mr. Doan, and he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I was just, like, I didn't really know what I was doing. And he was like, this is a big deal. And I remember, I mean, I was 15. I was like, really? And he was like, no, this is a huge, we have to call the paper. We have to call this. We have to, and he was like my manager. He was like, I'm going to handle it. Don't worry. And he did, right? He was like, this is such a big deal. I can't believe you wrote a book. I can't believe people in New York read your book, and like, this is what you're doing. And I felt so massively supported through that process that when I went to my award ceremony in New York City, I met a bunch of other kids who were in art school, who were in boarding school, who had teachers who trained them to become writers, and I did not have that at all. I had like my biology teacher who was like, yo, I'll sign this piece of paper for you. But I felt really, really, really supported with the teachers that I had, which I feel so, so, so grateful for now. Like, if my third grade teacher hadn't stopped me and been like, okay, like clearly we have something going on here, I literally don't think I might not be doing this, because it took her recognition for me to go, okay, like I'm gonna try this. And I mean, I've been really fortunate to travel and meet different students at different high schools across the country. And I think my time, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, at this school was really fundamental to me understanding what it means to write. Mainly because there's really no other place like the Bay Area. There's no high school like this high school, good or bad, right? And I mean, I say this, and it's probably gonna like, be such an eye roll, but I think the kids who go to school here, you guys are very fortunate. Like, I did an event in a library in Texas, and I met a bunch of librarians who had all just gotten fired. All of the books in Texas were being pulled from shelves. My books are not available in many libraries in Texas because they ban books pretty actively. And all of those librarians had lost their jobs. So there are many, many students who walk into really empty libraries because they have a lot of conservative politicians who don't want them to have access to stories about race or gender issues or anything like that. So I felt very free. Like, I was able, I would spend my lunch in the library on occasion in high school, and I was able to pick, anything. So I think a combination of really, really positive, influential teachers and having a very diverse school setting really, like, significantly pushed me as a writer.
Okay, thank you for that. It's good to hear about your experiences in school, and it's really inspiring to hear your story about winning this award. And I would say, like, I'm really proud of you, because that's a big accomplishment. My next question for you is, what challenges did you face writing this book? I know you talked about publishers and all that stuff. And was there a time when, there was a part of the story that you wanted to add and your editors were like, no, this has to be cut?
Not necessarily that. But when you write a book, the way that it goes is you send it to your editor, and your editor gives you a letter. And that letter is basically a letter of criticism. That's like, hey, I really liked this part, and I maybe fixed these things. For my first book, I had spent my whole life planning to write it. So, I mean, I don't know. With my third book, maybe it'll be different. But with my first book, my edit letter was like 3 to 4, maybe 3 pages, where I was like, okay, cool, I got to fix this and that. With this book, my editor gave me 10 single-space pages of feedback of maybe you should try this, and maybe we should do that, and blah, blah, blah. And we were on the phone for hours trying to figure it out. Her name is Jen. And I was like, Jen, I don't know what I'm doing, and blah, blah, blah. And she told me the second one is always harder than the first. They call it the sophomore slump, right? Like there's a jinx. And I didn't believe it. And then I believed it very, very quickly, because in tandem with me writing this book, I was still promoting my first book. And all of this cool stuff was happening for my first book. Like I was going to different events, and we were nominated for different awards, and we were winning different awards. And I realized that I was like sharpening dual blades of like the double-edged sword. If my first book had performed poorly, there would be a bunch of pressure for this book to succeed. But my first book didn't perform poorly. So I was like actively creating huge shoes for the book to fill. And I talked with my editor a lot about that, and she was like, well, I would say you have the better problem of the two, but it's going to take you a lot of internal work to detach from the first book and move on to the second. And she was really right. So I had to take her criticism in stride. That's what I said about building thick skin. Like, it's not even just from readers or like critics, it's from people on my team who are like, I believe in you, here's 10 pages of things that you need to fix. So that was really challenging. I think another challenging part for me was that this book was set in a place that I don't live in. So whenever I was like stuck with my first book, I was able to like drive around Oakland and go, okay, this is what I'm trying to say. But with this book, it was not so much. It was in Southern California.
Thank you. And it's nice to hear that the criticism, you take it as like, okay, they believe in me and I need to fix this.
Yeah, has anyone kept up with Alyssa Liu, like the Olympic, period? I think her approach to becoming better at her craft is so admirable, where she's like, well, it's not about winning a gold medal, it's about the practice, right? And if your goal is to publish a book, for example, this is really the least exciting part of the whole process, which is so interesting. Like the most exciting part is getting the chapter right, or like getting the feedback and putting it into action.
Thank you.
If you would answer this, what advice would you give to people who want to create a change in their community?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot of changes that need to happen, right? I remember teaching my class last year, and the SGA Academy had come, and I don't know if that was the exact question they asked, but we talked about change in community, and I was so proud of my students because they were like, I wish we had a different president, you know? And I was like, oh my gosh, me too. But change is really, really, really small. I think that's the thing, is like, I think many people feel so inundated by activism because they think they have to be like at the White House on the front lines, and it's not so, right? For me, change starts in books that I write, where I say, okay, well, what do I want the kids to learn? This time I want the kids to learn about environmental injustice. How am I gonna get them to learn about that? I'm gonna write a book. With my first book, it was like, I want the kids to learn about anti-Black racism in the Latino community. How am I gonna get that to happen? I guess I'm gonna write a book. So I guess to some people that would be big, but for me that just feels like what I have to do. For other people, I would imagine that it could be as small as correcting people in the language that they use, calling in and not calling out, right? I think that's the issue with a lot of progressive spaces, is that it's a lot of this when we should be doing like a lot of this. So I think that really, and I think my job obviously is like I write books, but I'm trying to be like the Pied Piper of like, I want everyone to read. And I think people underestimate the value of reading. I had a mentor in this process. His name was Yadon Israel, and he was really, really great. And he started this book club about getting young straight men to read fiction, because mainly men are reading nonfiction. And it was an exercise for him in letting men understand that they could have empathy. And one of the biggest things about reading fiction is it makes you privy to other people's experiences, and it opens like your eyes and your heart and whatever to understanding other people's lives. So I think like one of the smallest things you can do is read a book written by someone who is unlike you.
Because that's actually a really great point, because often a lot of big activisms start from something very small.
Totally.
Everything snowballs up and leads to this big change that most of the times is very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems like we're gonna have audience members write on cards. So if you have a question you wanna ask, I think they've handed out index cards for students. Do you have another question? Okay, so yeah, if you have a question, you can write them on the cards, we'll collect them.
Okay, and on to our next question. So a main theme for your book is about better air quality. How did you come about, making this book about air quality? I know it was, most of your books are advocating for something or shedding light onto something that you've noticed and you want people to also be aware of and find ways to implement them. So what made you write about air quality, or like what inspired you? Is that something you're passionate about, or like how did that come to be?
I knew that I wanted to write a book about environmental injustice when I was in college, because I had taken this class called Urban Education with my professor, Amanda LaShaw. And I wrote it into the author's note, but one of the first readings that we did was about lead contamination in water in Oakland. And I had to sit in like a seminar room with like all of my classmates, and they all were like, oh, these poor kids in the Bay Area, like that's so sad. And I was like, oh no, like that's me, and like that's my family, and there's a bunch of kids that I know right now who are drinking that water. And I started thinking about how people didn't know that, right? Like people, I don't know if you're aware, but like there's a massive amount of lead that's in the water in Oakland, and a lot of students, they've had to like rip those fountains out and make sure that the water is safe for them to drink. So I had that idea, and then I wanted to write about the Chevron refinery in Richmond, because there's a lot of schools that are around this gasoline refinery. They deal with a lot of gasoline leaks in the middle of school. And then I was spending quite a lot of time in the Inland Empire in my early 20s, and that was their issue. Their issue was air quality. The thing with water, though, like with Oakland, is like, all right, parents who can afford to take bottled water to school will take bottled water to school. But with air quality, I was like, the solution is, what is the solution? Like, you wear a mask every single day, that's only gonna be a facet of harm reduction. It's not gonna fix the problem. So I found it to be this very like almost insurmountable conflict that I found to be really compelling. And I was specifically drawn to the fact that these warehouses were placed in this area where Latino people mainly live. So all I wanted with this book was for children to understand that racism and issues of injustice are not just like name calling or like issues around segregation. They are issues of like the water we're drinking, the air we're breathing, the food that we're eating, right? And that can be like a really big concept to try to get kids to understand. So I wanted to make sure it was presented in a way that was friendly, like in a young adult book. And yeah, I think that's where the air quality issue really came through.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with you, because I also think that a lot of environmental issues are often overlooked, and there's some times when people tell you that climate change isn't real or it's not a thing, but it is something that affects us all and something that everybody should know about.
No, totally.
Yeah.
How were you able to balance the writing about a serious issue like air pollution while still keeping hope in the story?
Well, that's so funny, because I feel like the criticism my books get is that they're a bit sad, you know? And I guess, but one of the reasons I added romance to the book was because I needed to have levity, because I read the first draft where my editor gave me 10 pages of feedback, and she, I think verbatim, was like, this was a bit of a miserable read. Not because it's written bad, but like because it's like sad and sad and sad. It's like relentlessly sad. So that was one of the reasons we added like a massive relationship arc, issues within friendship. And I mean, we discussed the ending. I won't talk about the ending here for folks who want to read. But part of it was also me going, okay, I just presented this big fat issue for 370 pages. How am I gonna get the kids to be hopeful in 14 pages? I don't know, right? And I don't know because being hopeful right now is necessary, right? It's necessary, and it's really, really, really challenging, right? It is necessary to be hopeful, and I think we cannot be so foolish to go, la, 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 right? People are being deported. There are people who are being killed in Iran. There are like the persecution of the Palestinian people. There's all these issues that we could look at and go, what is the point, right? But that's also not a way to live, right? So if you go onto this massive optimistic side and you're just kind of doing, you'd have to be doing this. Like, you'd have to close your eyes and close your ears because it's really obvious what's happening, or it should be what's happening in the world. But also, if you're inundating your feed or your conversations or your knowledge with just like, people are dying, people are deporting, you know, you don't really get anywhere either. It feels like a stalemate. So I think the middle is the compromise of like, okay, we don't live in a perfect world. Actually, we have politicians right now who are making our world even harder to live in for many, many, many people. How do we, you know, wake up in the morning and go, I have to teach kids and I have to write a book and I have to feed my family or whatever it is. So it was a massively hard thing to do with this book. It's one of the reasons we added like regular teenage romance, is to find that balance.
Hope is very important in situations in which we are in currently.
Yes.
There's a lot of terrible things going on around the world, and the only thing people can really do is have hope that things can get better and try activism for better change, which hope really is what drives activism, which is to have hope for something better.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on to talking about the characters in the book, you just talked about like how there's a relationship dynamic in the book and there was a bit of romance. And I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler, but the characters in the book that fight towards change, they're actually exes, and they come together to advocate for something that they both believe in. And one of the questions that I had was, why make them exes instead of starting like a new relationship where, like, you know, they, yeah.
I think from a plot perspective, I really struggled with starting the book, like, meaning I changed the first chapter like 10 different times. And I have a really good group of friends who read my work. And I had them read it and then flag areas where it was like, well, this would actually be the first chapter. And one of my friends, Layla, was like, no, this should be the first chapter. And it was like a reconnecting moment in the way that the book now starts. Because she said, if I was a kid, I would wonder, why did these kids break up? Are they gonna get back together? And those were the two big anchors in any relationship, like, or former relationship arc. So from a place of hooking a reader and levity, I think it's really a lot more, it provided more questions to go, why did they break up? What was the problem? As opposed to like, oh, I think he's so cute. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it came from a plot perspective of like, how do we speed it up? Obviously there's a lot to tell, but I wanted to get to a quicker point of action.
That's really interesting, thank you.
Writing about something like air pollution and factory and warehouse building is something that is very important in the book. What was your research process for it? How were you able to, what type of research did you conduct for this book?
A lot. I went to 2 research institutions, so I think they taught me well. I went to Santa Cruz, I went to Berkeley. And I think, I don't know, but when I was a senior in high school, we had to write a research paper. Now, I've talked to my friends who have gone to different universities, and they were not asked to do as much research as I was as an undergrad. But I learned how, which was really, really important. So I was on JSTOR, which is like this archive of academic articles, and I didn't have a .edu email anymore, so articles sometimes literally cost $300, and I was like, I'm not gonna pay $300 to read this article. So I would find anything that was free, I would print it, I would put it into a binder, I would read it, I would annotate it. But I actually interviewed a lot of people who lived in the area, so I drove down to San Bernardino, I went to a few art exhibits, I went to a couple of like gatherings, I met people. I would be like, hey, can I please call you later this month and talk? So I interviewed about 30 to 40 people about what it was like to live in the area, what air quality pollution was like, how it affected their children, how it affected their family planning, their schooling. So that was a big piece. The woman who does my epigraph, her name is Elizabeth Sina. I was trying to get in contact with her, I couldn't. I knew she was gonna be at a conference. I went to the conference and I was like, oh my gosh, can we please talk? So it was a mix of active reading of like, I can't just read, I have to highlight, I have to flag, I have to annotate. And again, I feel really grateful that I had such a good like upbringing in terms of literacy, because I learned how to really gather what a text was saying. This was pre-AI, everybody. So there was no way, well, it was actually post, but you know what I mean? Like, that's why it's important to actually know how to read, is to be able to read the article and go, this is what it's talking about, instead of feeding it to a robot that will give you the incorrect talking points, right? So I had to do a lot of that, but it was mainly being on the phone with people and asking really, honestly, intimate questions of like, has living in the area changed your family planning? How did you decide what school your child was going to go to, given the air quality issues? There was one woman who told me that she chose to move to the area because it was close to the Mexico border, and the only way she could afford asthma inhalers was by going to Tijuana and then coming back, because the price of inhalers were a lot more affordable down there. And like, it was such a passing comment to her, and I was like, wow, that's actually really, really, really sad and also very important. So from talking to many people, I was able to gather really like textural details that I added to the book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question is, okay, what character do you identify with in your story? Because I know a lot of writers, when they write, their main character or a character in the book is often a character that kind of like represents them in a way, or they see themselves in, or something like that. Do you have a character like that, or no?
In this book, less. In my first book, for sure. In this book, I think there's a very clear divide between Paloma and Julio in terms of what they represent. Like, Paloma's very righteous, Julio's very practical, of like, I know this is wrong, but this is what I have to do. I feel like I land somewhere in the middle, so it was really interesting to write both of them and go, this is what a younger version of me would think, this is what an older version of me might think, this is how I currently think at this age. So I think a little bit of both of them. I identify with, I mean, the parents in some way as well, but like, those were the two ones.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We're at time? Okay. Are we doing audience questions? Yeah? Okay, so if you have a question that you want to ask, if you feel brave, there seems to be a mic down here. Is that? Oh. Oh, cool.
So thank you for submitting your questions, but also we'll come around with the microphones too if anyone wants to just ask a question directly, and we'll see how much time we have to go back and forth between the written questions and questions from the audience.
Okay, first question is, was it hard to manage teaching and writing at the same time?
Yeah. Oh my God. That actually made me really laugh, yeah. Yes, it's really hard. There are some days where every minute of my day is accounted for, and those are not fun days, but there are more days like that than I would like to admit, where it's like, okay, wake up at 5, go to work, teach till 3. Sometimes I'll like do a call for the book on my lunch, where I'm like, okay, I'll talk to like my agent or my editor, and they're very supportive. They know, they're like, we only have 10 minutes, let's do 10 on the phone. And it's like, I gotta go to the gym, I have to do this, I have to do that. Like, especially when I travel, like I have to start traveling soon for book promotion. It's really, 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 really hard. But I think about all the problems that I could have in my life, and I'm like, this is an inconsequential problem. This is not a problem. Like the fact that I have to wake up and go to work and make money and then travel across the country and meet kids and promote this is not a problem, you know? I am tired, right? But I think about the way that my grandparents grew up and the way that my mom raised me and my sister, and I'm like, I don't know how you all did it, because I couldn't survive. As like, especially with my grandparents, I'm like, you guys had like 9 kids, and my grandfather was like a dishwasher at a hotel. I don't, like, that is a problem, right? And I really give it to them, but I live a very charmed life, like, and it's exhausting for sure, but I would pick this problem like any day.
Question from the audience is, how did your family feel about your pursuit of writing? Were they supportive?
Yes and no. My mom is a teacher and she's a school principal. So as soon as I was really into books, she was like, oh my God, like, great. She tried to get me to do sports, and I was like, like, this is not for me. And as a kid, I remember she put me in soccer. Oh my God, I must have been such a crazy kid to handle, like now that I think about it. Because I told her, I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And she's like, you have to try new things. You can't just read all the time. And I was like, I am not gonna do that. If you put me in soccer, I'm gonna sit on the field. And she did, and I sat on the field. And I was like, I just want to read. Like, that's all, I just want to read. And she came to a point where she was like, how could I, as a parent, go, you're not allowed to read because I want you to play soccer? Like, what? So very supportive in that sense. Like, she bought me 1 million books, you know, which I'm so grateful for. I think with my first book, we hit some hiccups for sure, where my family felt, I pulled a lot from my own family dynamic and put it into that book. So I think they felt very seen. But for the most part, I think they're very proud of me. Like, I can't imagine, you know, what it would be like to have have your kid go, I remember when this happened when I was 10. What if I write a whole book about it? You know, like, I don't know what that's like at the same time. So I have empathy for them in that respect. But through and through, I think my family was very supportive of what I wanted to do.
We have a question over
Yeah.
Hi. Oh, I'm over here. Hi. Sorry. I really relate to what you had said, where you had said there was a moment in your life where you were like, I want to make this the rest of my life. I wanted to ask, how did you practice patience, like waiting for that to become your life? Because, you know, I'm in high school, so that might be a while from now, but yeah.
Yeah, I read a book to my kids every year. My current kids are here, by the way. They're 9 to 11. Period. Yeah, let's give them an applause. They're very scared to come, so please be kind to them. But I read a book to them every year called Esperanza Rising. We read it in Spanish. Period. Yes, let's give it up for Esperanza Rising. And I went through a really hard time a few years ago, and I remember I had to. I went through this hard thing, and then I had to come to work, and I had already lesson planned, and we were going to start that book that day. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is like the universe or God or whatever, because the first chapter, or like the prologue or whatever of that book, is this girl's dad telling her, we read it in Spanish, so I'm going to have to translate it, but he's basically like, be patient and the fruit will fall into your hand, right? So I have learned so much through delayed gratification. You all live in an era of instant gratification where when you scroll, you get the dopamine surge. You're like, oh my gosh, now it's this, now it's this. But so much of like real life is waiting for something to happen, and it's not fun. But can you imagine, like, it would be so cool if you went to the gym and then you left the gym and immediately it's like, oh, you know, like, I look so good. But it's not how it happens, because wouldn't we all be at the gym doing that in like that factory? But when you've been at the gym for like a year, and you're like, man, nothing happened for 5 months, and now suddenly something happened, there's this massive feeling of like, I waited and it came, right? And I think it always comes when it's not, whatever it is that you want, the way that I've trained myself to think anyway, maybe I'm crazy, but if I would have gotten a book deal at like 17, I wouldn't have known what to do with that. I got my book deal at 25 and I didn't know what to do. Still, like, I had to ask so many people, what do I do and how do I do this and blah, 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 and how is my life gonna change? And it changed dramatically. But I needed to be at the right place at the right time for that to happen. So the way that I've learned to think about everything, whether that's like a book or people I wanna meet or whatever it is like, at the right time it will come, and that has never failed me. I remember my first book got rejected from a random magazine in 2020. No offense to the magazine, but they're like a no-name magazine now, right? And I cried and cried and cried and cried. I submitted my first chapter and they gave me a no, and their no was positive. They were like, this is really impressive, but it's not for us. And if I had let that determine me, we would not have that book. So I waited and said, man, this hurts, but I'm gonna figure it out. I have to figure it out, and I'm gonna have to wait. And I waited maybe 2 more years, and then eventually, like, my editor at like a big 5 publisher was like, this is one of the best books I've ever read. So I think it's just about trusting the timing. Like, you will eventually land on your feet for sure. Yeah.
I actually wrote one, but I'd rather say it in person. So clearly, like, you're very big on like activism and like you understand what's going on in your community. My question is, like, are you scared that people will react like in a bad way and have negative things to say about your writing?
People do have negative things to say about my writing, you know? I don't know if y'all are aware, it was something I had to become aware of when I started writing, but most of the people who read children's literature are elder white women in like the Midwest. I get emails and I meet them at conferences, and sometimes they have nice things to say, sometimes they're like, they have terrible things to say about my work. And that's fine, right? Like, I think a book belongs to the reader. There are some authors that I follow, oh my gosh, who will respond to every criticism, and I was like, this is such a massive waste of your time. And also, people are entitled to not like my work, you know? People are entitled to not like me. And once you realize that and you stop fighting the, man, I hope they like my story, man, I hope they like my work, man, I hope they like me, life becomes a lot easier. There are so many people who do not like me. And if I were to be focused on that, my life would be so blah, right? So I don't write from a place of fear of like, what if so-and-so doesn't like it? I write from a place of like, well, what if so-and-so really does like it? And what if they hated young adult literature until they read my book? You know what I mean? So I think that's a mindset change for sure. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if there's like a deeper meaning behind your book cover.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this book cover. My first book cover was so easy. Hired an artist, he made the book cover, so beautiful, done. This book cover, one of my kids is laughing because he knows we hired an artist, and I always have my students look at the covers and I have them vote. And last year they voted and the artist redid it and I showed it to them and I was like, guys, I hate it. Like, I hate it so much. And one of them was like, yeah, this is really ugly. And I talked to them. This is so crazy to tell people because they're gonna be like, you asked your students if you should fire the artist, but I did. I was like, do we go in a different direction? And they were like, yeah. So I had to call my editor after and I was like, Jen, I'm so sorry, but like, if the kids are really honest, if the kids don't like it, nobody's gonna like it. And I felt so bad. It was like one of the moments in my career where I had to be like a big adult of like, oh, you're no longer on my team, I'm so sorry. But I had to let the artist go. And then over the summer, we did we hired a different artist and she did a bunch of covers. And I finally said, I want something neutral. I want it to be text, which was really hard to do in a YA space because if you go to a bookstore, it's all cartoons. And I was like, I don't want any more cartoons. I want something that's a bit more serious and literary. So we chose the lowercase. I don't know if that answers your question. And like, the meaning is that there are clouds. In an earlier version, the clouds were gray, but I wanted something that was very straightforward and to the point.
Question. Oh. Hello?
Yeah.
Question from the audience. Are you scared people will take your activism and truth in the wrong way?
We have one over here.
Okay, your next question is, what is your definition of the American dream, and is education a form of resistance?
Education, let's start there, is 1000% a form of resistance. And I'm sure your teachers are telling you guys this about like AI, right? We're watching like all the AI slop on TikTok. Yeah, I hear you. Because me too, in some way, right? We have to turn our brain off at some point. But this might sound like tin hat of me of like a conspiracy theory, but I mean this 100%. The way that we elected the current president, who I hate, and I can say that wholeheartedly, is because there are many, 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 many people in this country who have the power to vote and who do not know basic things around education or literacy, right? And that's why I think reading is so important. And I think that there's a sense of understanding of learning that many, many people do not have. And so when we talk about fake news, This is why your English teachers are so important, is because they're teaching you how to actually read stuff that is real and find stuff that is real and have a basic sense of media literacy, because there are millions of people in this country who vote who are literally looking at an AI-generated image and headline thinking it's real, thinking that there are Latino people who are here to assault women and sell drugs, right? These are fake things that are spread, but they don't have the literacy to go, is this coming from a reliable source? The job of your teachers is to tell you, is it? And if you think so, why do you think so? And if not, how do we know that it's not? So I think education is like one of the biggest tools to learn how to resist systems of oppression. In fact, I think that current political systems rely on people being dumb for them to continue, right? So I think the more, this is why libraries are so important, but the more you read, like, the more almost you build like an allergy to it of like, well, I don't believe that. I know that that's fake. So yes. Now, in terms of the American dream, I think that's really different. I don't know if anyone's ever read Of Mice and Men. I don't know if that's still assigned to people, but that's like, yeah, that's like the big thing, right? Like he wants to be with his rabbits. Oh my gosh, I'm like an English teacher right now. But it's different for everybody, right? My version of the American dream is different from my parents' version. They were like, we want to come to a country and make sure our kids go to college. Boom, that's done for them. My version, I would say, is, it's what I wanted was, I want to be a teacher and I want to write books. I did that, right? But that changes because now it's not, I don't just want to write books, I want the kids to learn. And it's silly, right? Because you would think as a teacher that the kids are learning, they totally are. But it's kind of a spooky time to be a teenager, honestly, because of things like AI. The kids are not learning how they used to learn. Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. There was no AI when I was like taking honors English. I had to like really read. And I would say for me is a big massive form of resistance and like a dream that I have is that kids are just reading. Like if we have the phones, because I've accepted that we have the phones are equally learning tools if you learn how to use them as such. I love the Libby app. It's like a digital library app. I'm reading on my phone all of the time. So my screen time is high, but it's used in the right ways. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the difference. Hi.
I have a question. How do you get your creative ideas? Like, do they just pop up, or like, do you get creative ideas from internet or something?
This is one of my students. Ana paso, because that's brave. I think one of the most important things about being a writer is that you're porous, which means that like you're a sponge. You just absorb whatever it is, right? Writers are notoriously kind of crazy people, which makes sense because I tell people this all the time. I lie for a living. This is completely made up. These people are made up. The places are made up. So I think part of it has been understanding how to observe people and knowing how to file that in my brain and save it for later. I literally, I don't know, I think I was at like a grocery store and the checker at the counter had a gap between his teeth. And I just thought about that for like, it sounds so crazy, but I thought about it for days because I was like, I could use that somewhere. Where could I use that and how could I describe it? To anyone else, I'd be like, that guy has a gap between his teeth, you know? But to me, I was like, well, so it was like, it looks like a matchstick, it looks like this, it looks like that. And I think that's how a writer's brain kind of works, is like, there's a book by Raina Maria Rilke called Letters to a Young Poet. In the first letter, he basically writes, if you do not know what to write about, perhaps you're not cut to be a writer. Because if I asked you, because this is what creative writing programs are really like, I need you to describe to me how to pour a glass of water. And it needs to be the most beautiful thing I've ever read. You have to be able to deliver that. And that sounds like such a mundane action of like, well, now I'm just pouring some water. But a writer will make you go, wow, that was the most beautiful scene I've like ever read in my entire life. So I think that's the shift.
We're almost out of time, so one last quick one.
Anyone have one last question?
One last question here.
My question is like, you already spoke some on it, but how can students and teenagers combat AI like and literacy with even teachers using it to teach or grade or give feedback?
He's telling on y'all.
So outside of reading, like even with teachers around us using it, how can we as students improve our literacy and, not depend on AI?
Yes. Well, I think part of it is we must unfortunately accept that this is like the wave of the world, right? That more people are using AI than not. I'm a big AI hater, if it hasn't been clear, mainly because AI, I don't know if you guys know this, but the centers where they're keeping like essentially the robots and machines that are making AI for us to use are actively poisoning a lot of communities, because similar to this book, they're spewing a lot of chemicals into the air, and they're mainly placed in areas where Latino and Black people live. So that's one of the reasons why I really, really hate AI. But honestly, it sounds so like old school. We need to pick up the physical media, you know what I mean? Whether that's like, I'm painting again, I'm sewing again, I'm writing in a real journal again. It does a lot for our brains, and it does a lot for our level of resiliency. The computer's cool, the phone is cool, it's easy, but we really need to get back to how do you pick up a physical book? The fact that there are kindergartners right now where you go, where's the cover? And they're scrolling on a book, it's not good. It's not looking good. So I would say that, physical media for sure.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please help thank Carolina Ixta for coming to talk to us today. One quick announcement. Some of you were winners of the book but didn't get it when you came in. If I call your name, make sure you grab a book on your way, and then we'll have some signing out there in the lobby. Michelle Maya, Liseth Ramirez, Alexia Sanchez, Antonio Vasquez, get your books from over there. Thank you for coming.